Alright, so trying to figure out if this is the right color for this one. I wanted to get it out here into bright sun, and a lot of times we'll bring out different colors. And it looks pretty good. There's a little something. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do with it yet. Maybe a little darker. It's just kind of I guess a candy apple red at this point. The green's turned out nice. I was looking for cherry red. This is sort of candy apple red, just a little brighter red than a cherry red, darker. Let's see the neck here. There's the neck. It's matching up through the woods pretty nicely. Let's turn it over for the back as well, without breaking anything. So there's the back. Yeah. So maybe a little darker. Maybe like either black or maybe even a dark brown to bring that out. Alright, so this is what it looks like with the sanding sealer on. Really not too much different. It's not really a finish in that sense. This has a little bit more of a sheen to it. A little bit. And here's the headstock. You can see, and this is in sunshine, so hopefully the color is right. But yeah. Alright. Okay, so there's our first coat on. I think it's turning out good. Looks pretty even. And here's the neck. That's looking pretty good too. Okay, well, we got to do that about 10 more times with a light sanding in between. All right, here's the next day after the 3 coats of lacquer. And so I'm going to say right now that although I don't think this turned out quite like the original cherry red, cherry red picture, it turned out nice. It's less red dye on this one and more prominent stripes. I think the color is probably close, but I just don't have as much dye on the surface as the other one. The other one has almost more of a solid color look to it than this. This is more translucent. So I will also say, and we'll see how it continues as I progress with the lacquer, but I'll say that I think the water-based stain, the fabric stain, is great for a really translucent finish like this, where you can see the grain and you can see all the stripes. But it's probably harder to put more pigment on the surface of the guitar, of the wood, I should say. And so you don't get nearly as dark a color, whereas the oil-based stains probably can put more pigment into the wood and leave you with a darker color. So there's the first pronouncement. I'm going to say I like it, and it's different than the regular one you would see from Gibson. But we'll continue on. So one other point about when you're doing lacquer finishes is that sometimes you can see in the sunlight here, see how this looks a little different here. Now I can run my finger over it and feel it's a little rough right there. It was that way right in here, and I've just taken a really light pass with very fine steel wool and that takes it right off. So don't be worried if you see, you can see some more of it here, right in here. Don't be worried if you see some small variations there like that, because there is a point after a number of oats of lacquer where you do a final polish on the wood to try and get any of those kinds of little surface variations out. So continue on and keep putting some more coats of lacquer on. All right, so fully sanded, but I also am experimenting with something I read about how Gibson approached getting the right color for theirs. And that was that because of the variations in wood and how things work, there were times when they would tint the lacquer itself so that they could get more of the color, in essence, building up as they put lacquer coats on it. So rather than tint the lacquer, I'm just trying to go back over it with my water-soluble dye. And I think that it's actually adding color to that layer of lacquer I've put down, because it does look darker to me. We'll see if it shows up on the video. But I've done it both on the guitar body and the neck. I'll turn this over so you can see this side too. This still looks fairly light over here, but this side I think has picked up more of the red color, but we'll see. Let's go put some lacquer on it. Okay, so we've let the lacquer harden for about a week, and I think that's going to be just fine. So now it's the process of getting it so that it has a very high gloss finish. And it's a little hard to see here, but there's just a little bit of a kind of, I guess you'd call it a little surface fog on it. And what we'll do is use a series of different sanding methods. So we'll start with 2000 grit wet dry, and we'll use some water with it. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go with this polishing compound. And then lastly, we'll use this, which is very, very light duty. And for those two, I want to use these foam polishers, if you might. And our last step will be a nice coat of Johnson paste wax. And I've gotten this idea from another person on YouTube that has put a great video on finishing out there, so I'll put a link to that as well. But so we'll use those methods to try and get us the highest gloss possible. All right, so the next stage is to use Johnson's paste wax on it. Oh, and by the way, please like and subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything and sure helps out the channel. Thanks a lot. All right, so let's get on with this paste wax here. I might have to speed it up a little, so let's do a little first, and we'll just see how it looks, and then we'll go fast. See what kind of difference this makes. Now the idea here is apparently, just like a car or a piece of furniture, is you put it on and then let it dry, and then rub off the haze. So let's see how this looks. We're getting close now, folks. I hope. We'll be ready to string this up and get it planned. I'm looking forward to that. So let's see how this looks after we get it all on there. All right. All right, so this guitar is fully polished with all of the different grits we talked about. So I've gotten it all the way up to putting the paste wax on it, the Johnson's paste wax. So, and there's what it looks like. Looking very shiny. I know that it's a little unusual to do that to the fingerboard, but I waxed it up just to see how that feels. It feels really good. But so here's the back side, all polished up. So not exactly a factory finish, but not too bad. All right, so it's time to put the electronics in, and the hardware, and the tuners up in here. So let's get started on that. Oh, by the way, I have a separate video on putting the wiring harness together for this. Let me show you something real quick. All right, so here's where the tune or the volume and tone pots go, and switches and whatnot. And again, on the other video, I've showed in more detail how this works, but I'll show you. This lines up like this. This is what these look like here. So this is where the two posts are. You can see them here, two posts. We've got the output here, which is right there. So we have all of these outlined, and the reason we do this is because we want to get this wiring harness. This is looking at the inside, like looking at the inside of this guitar. We want to get this wiring harness so it goes around the F-hole so we don't see the wires in there. So that's the whole point of this, is to wire those up in such a way that the wires are inside the cavity, but you can't see them. The other thing too about this particular style of guitar is that we have to feed these completely wired, so they have to be all fully wired, and we feed them in as a unit and then pull them through the holes. And there'll be a wire coming in from this pickup and this pickup into here as well that we'll hook in here before we finish everything up. But that means we have to stick this whole wiring harness down through the F-hole and then bring the tone pots up through the top of the guitar. It's a little tricky, but you know, with some patience, it works. I've done it before. So anyhow, just FYI, look for my other video on this one. If you're going to be doing a fair amount of this work, I would highly suggest that you go ahead and do a template like this, or a jig, if you might, so that you have a place to hook all of these on, make sure you've got them right, and then they're all in place to make sure you've got all the wires soldered in appropriate spots. All right, let's get started. All right, so sorry I couldn't show you all that because I was having to get in there and stick my head in the way and all that. But they're all in place, and they should all be there. So they should all be hooked up correctly. But we're going to do another test. Now, I haven't tightened all these down completely yet. But so one other suggestion from doing it this time, even though I've done it once before, is you get all these in here, and you shove this one all the way in back first, and then start to put these into place, because this one stretches out and the wires need to stretch out with it. The other thing is this particular one, this is the one for the, sorry, you can't see here. This is the one for the neck pickup, this one right here. That's the volume for the neck pickup. And that wire is stretched pretty tight. So just be sure that you get that into place, and you have to kind of push the wires underneath. Get underneath with your finger and kind of push them into place. So one last thing is there is one wire you can see right here. But what I'm going to do is use something sticky, like maybe double-sided tape, and just push it up top like that, and it'll hold it in place. So we've got one last to do, but let's test first and make sure everything's working. All right, so there they are, all back installed, and wires are all kind of tucked away. I'll still fix this one over here that we talked about, but here we are. So this should be the, turn that up a little so you can hear it. Hopefully hear that. And nothing up there. And then, yeah, good. Sorry, truck going by here. So now you can hear both of them. There we go. Yep. Neck only, bridge only, both. Perfect. And then tone knobs, won't be able to tell much, but you can tell it's a lower there. Hopefully you can hear that, and then it'll go more trebly here. Yep, good. All right, we are done with the wiring. We'll continue on then. All right, so here we go with all the strings on. Come up here on this side. I haven't cut off the long bits, but so yes, it's a 12 string. Yeah, that means it has 12 strings on it, and they fit into here like this. And you got to kind of be careful how you do that, because they have, seems like one way they fit in. In this particular kit, they give you, these are the strings out of the kit. I didn't use new ones yet. They just give them to you in a big wad, so you have to kind of sort it out yourself. It's a little tedious, but you can get it done. Anyhow, so now what I want to do is leave it with tension for a day or two, just to make sure that the neck holds. But I'll show you something else. This nut, that's this part here, the plastic part, and this one is plastic. That's way too high off the strings there. Oops. Try and get my hand behind there so you can focus. There we go. So you can see how high that is, and that keeps the string too high off of the frets. It's too hard to push them down. So I'm going to have to shave this off just temporarily, because that's just too high. So partly what I want to do is I'll measure this once I get them up to tension, and I'll figure out how much I need to take off of the nut, and then I can do that just for the time being. I'm going to put a bone nut in here. That's, I think, the best material for it. I've got bone already prepared, or I'll buy one. I don't know which I'll do, but and then on this particular one, it's not like a regular acoustic guitar. This has these tuners on it, so you can adjust these sliders back and forth to try and get, once you've got the guitar tuned, what you're trying to do is get it so that it'll go to octave. When you go high and low, it'll go up an octave, and you want that octave note to be exactly the same as the regular open note. And sometimes you have to adjust these back here. You'd call this the bridge on a regular guitar. You make it go back and forth, and it gives you the different string length, and then you get that octave note perfect. So let's go ahead and do that. I have one last thing I'll show you. to install, and that's just the strap holders. That's these guys here. I'll put those on, and then we'll make it up to speed, and we'll plug it in. All right, well, it's not in tune, but here we go. First time. Oh yeah, that's a lovely sound. That's the neck, which is going to have a kind of a lower, well, shouldn't say lower, but a less crisp sound. And then there's the bridge, the bridge. So it's got a more crisp sound to it, but seems to be working. Oh yeah, lovely. Well, we'll see if we can tune it up and see what that sounds like. But hooray, we're getting there. All right, so the next thing is, as I said, this nut is too high. So I've measured the string heights, and I need to take about that much off. I might take a little less than that, but pretty close to that. So let me go do that. I'm just going to use a regular kind of a disc sander to do this. Nothing fancy. So let me go take that off, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I've left a little extra. You can see where my blue line is. I'm going to go ahead and try that out and see how that feels. I don't want to get it too close. We'll have buzzing on the frets if I get too close. The other thing is, when I was cutting this, it sure smelled like bone. Bone has a very distinctive smell when you grind on it. So this may actually be a bone nut. May not have to replace it at all. So let's go ahead and put that back in, and we'll see how it sounds. All right, so we've had a little hiccup. I hope we've fixed it. We're here at this is the bridge pickup. This is where the strings come across, and this is where the strings hook on over here. And when you tighten all these up, it puts a lot of stress on this bar because it's pulling, back up a little bit here, it's pulling all this way. And 12 strings, because they have 12 strings as opposed to just 6, put a lot more strain on both this part of the guitar and on the neck and all of the other aspects of the structure of the guitar. So in this particular one, this guitar is made, I'm assuming that the body of the guitar, the body here, is the same body they would use for a 6-string guitar, and which I've already shown you in a couple of other videos, where we're working on this ES335 clone, but it's a 6-string. So they didn't do anything to give this more structure. So I'm going to just say that this 12 right here was having a problem, because what was happening, I'll come down lower here, see if I can get it in focus, there we go, that as I was doing the all 12 strings up to full tension, this part was pulling out. So it was actually kind of pulling like this, but the wood up in front of it, right in this area, was just crunching down underneath that stress, and it was sort of pulling the whole thing out. So I ended up, after several attempts at not doing this, because I'm not a huge fan of it, but I went ahead and I epoxied these into place using, basically a simple clear weld, quick setting epoxy. So you can see just a little bit of the epoxy down here. Let's see if I can get in closer. See it down here, that's kind of that glossy stuff. So I've done both of them. This one wasn't so bad, but this one was really pulling out. Now I could say that partly it's because I did ream them out a little bit to make sure these fit, especially this one with the wire that goes down next to it. But I'll just point out that if you're building one of these, the 12-string version, be mindful that this spot is particularly vulnerable to having the tension of the strings pull these out. So you might have to go ahead and do the same thing of epoxying them in. Okay. All right, so it looks good. Got it up full tuning, and both of those look good. Can't see that one way over there. Got to come around here to take a look. Get it in focus. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. So there's that one, and I don't see anything pulling up on it, so I'm hoping that that's strong enough. Now, I do see just at the base of it here, maybe you can see the same thing I'm seeing. Just down here, it looks like there may be a little bit of pulling up, but that's where the biggest stress is. And you can see that, again, now that I've got it fully strung, you can see all 12 of these strings here are pulling that way. And that means it wants to basically take the bridge and pull it out like that. So that's why I'm keeping an eye on this backside here. So we'll see how it does. So I'm going to leave it up to full tuning. And so it sounds good, though. Yeah, so we'll do some strumming on it here in just a second. All right, now that we got that sorted, a couple of adjustments to show you. One is the height of the strings above the pickup here. We're going to do both this one, the neck and the bridge, and I'll show you what the suggestions are. You'll see this in the documents that I post down below here. There's going to be a link to both the fret wire, which is where I got this guitar from, but I'm also going to give you a link to the Stu Mac instructions, which are a little more detailed and give you some good guidance on this. Anyhow, we're looking for that gap right there between the strings and this part of the pickup. This little screw, if you want to call it that, is where the winding is, and you'll feel it's a magnetic in there, and that's the whole point. Is this is a little piece of steel with that's a magnet, sorry, that's got wire wound around it. Anyhow, you want to get that distance that gap to be the right height, and the way they say is they want to go for 0.0625 inches when you push the string down at this fret here. This is the 22nd fret right there. So we're going to push it down, and then we're going to put this gap in there. And we want it to just barely touch. See how it's sliding in between there, but not pushing up? See how that's pushing up on the string? So it's just sliding in there. And what I did was I'm using a regular feeler gauge for a car, and I've just added 3 together here to get to the point, or pretty close to the 0.0625. So I put those 3 together, and it gave me pretty close. Now you want to check it both here and on the high E side over here. And it looks good. Now the other one is we want to check, oh, by the way, and if it's not right, use this screw right here to get it to go up and down. Oops, there we go. So you screw it in and watch what happens to the height of this. Hopefully I can do this without getting too much shadow on it. There we go. See a little better. Can you see it going up there when I screw it in and going down when I screw it back down? So you just use that screw and the one over on this side to raise and lower this one. And then the same thing for the bridge pickup here, except the distance is a little different. That one is 0.09375. And so I've added that up, and I'll show you what that looks like. So that one is these added up here. So it's 0.025, 0.22, 0.20, 0.18, and 0.008. Then you add those up, and that gets you close to where you want to be. And again, I'm going to push down on this string at that same 22nd fret, and then I want this to slide in there. Now you can see that one's just a little high. See how it's pushing that string up when I do that? So I want to take this down just a little bit, so let's do that. Take this down just a smidge by unscrewing, and then we try it again. Push that string down, come in here, and now we're just there. Just a little high still, so we'll take it down. And the idea is you don't want to have it too close, because it makes the the sound it's not as nice a sound. So just a little lower. And there we go. It's perfect right there. So I'll do that on the other side as well, and then we'll have that adjusted, and I'll show you the next adjustment we can make. Well, welcome everybody. Here it is all finished. I'll show you this at the beginning so you know what you're in for. But this is a kit build, 12 string, and it's meant to be sort of a Gibson ES 335 clone. But I was going for something that's a vintage look. It's a dot 60s cherry red. I sort of got cherry, but it's a burgundy slightly. Anyhow, it turned out really nice. Most of it is complete, and I don't have a emblem on the top here yet, but we'll work on that. Good. This is the neck. This is both. This is the bridge. And yeah, sounds pretty good. Probably wouldn't play that song on it, but so it's kind of a vintage sounding 12 string, if you like that kind of thing. Sort of a secret agent man thing. So yeah, turned out really nice. And you know, it can do some of the traditional stuff. Here's one that the Birds did back in, I think, like in the 60s, maybe the early 70s, called Turn, Turn, Turn. Apparently Pete Seeger did it originally, and it's based on a scripture out of the Bible. So. Anyhow, it's turned out really nice. There's the front, and the back doesn't have that figure on it, but it's still very pretty. So if you'd like, come join as I put this together. This is part 2. The first part, I was doing a lot of the coloring on this, so I'll put a link there and up there. Oops, there we go, up there, so you can see what those are like. A lot of fun to add to the group of instruments that are collecting. But yeah, for the price, you just can't beat it. Really very pretty. All right, hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it when you do that. It really helps me, helps the channel. Nice to get that feedback from you all too. Thanks, and keep watching.